I'm trying to coexist, exist. Yeah, I'm trying to coexist, exist. I'm trying to coexist.
The Ethics Skill Podcast is back. We have Richard Groves and John Blanton as our guests today. What are we going to be talking about? With Richard Groves, we're going to be talking about financial education, when to invest, why should you invest, how can you prepare yourself to have that extra cushion for retirement, but more importantly, what should your mindset be to acquire this behavior of not only saving, but also investing more than just your future, but what you leave behind for those that you love. And with John Blanton, founder of Men Make a Difference organization, for those that are seeking mentorship. And that's exactly what they provide. Mentorship and education to change people's life. They are devoted to not only help those in need, but to be more than just a friend. In some cases, Men Make a Difference become that secondary father that a child doesn't have, because that's what Men Make a Difference is all about. It's not only about making that difference for somebody's life, but it's about promoting growth and promoting community service, but also love. So let's explore more about these experiences. And as we say in the Ethics Skill Podcast, we're here to explore human experiences. Let's start.
Mentorship makes a difference.
Literally is on my phone. And in this day and age, you can't say that you can't put it together because you have too much at your disposal.
And even AI tech is right now, you can use that to even help with budgeting.
Exactly. You can put that on your phone. There's no reason, no rationale why anyone would tell you, well, I didn't do that. That just means you're lazy. No disrespect to people, but that's just being lazy.
So rewinding and all of that. The big part of that piece was helping this kid create a vision beyond the classroom.
And purpose.
Right. And so our kids go to school every day. Yeah, some of this stuff is taught, but being a former educator, look at...
Communication is a two-way stream. You can communicate as nice as you want, but if the other person already is not listening to understand, they're listening to for their own promotion, of their own benefit, their own good, on their own ego, and to be combative, you shouldn't worry about that. If you said it because...
And having confidence, because once you're confident and independent, then you can then hop into the next stage, which is interdependence, which is now you're bringing two independent people together, and now they could depend on each other for things. And you can only get interdependent if the ego's out the way, right? Pride's out the way, all that stuff.
So, Richard, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for getting
for being in the podcast. How did you start this journey of financial education?
How did I start it, or how did I? So I've always been a person that's looking to how do I show value. I've always done that. In my first book I wrote, which I told you about, Oh God, I Need a Job, The 5 Commandments of Getting Hired. Yeah.
Right here, guys.
Was all about self-reflection first, understanding yourself. The better you understand yourself, the better you can do things for yourself, right? And so what I noticed as I grew up, I was very fortunate to be around a lot of mentors. They didn't know they were mentors, let me quick say that. I grew up, my father passed when I was 5 years old. And my mother always put us in places where we were able to learn if you were paying attention. A lot of times we're young, I was telling Kevin, a lot of times we don't pay attention when we're young, right? And then we only find out later on, but I was one of those kids that was always paying attention, listening to the barbershop conversations, right? Watching an uncle who had a business on the side. He was a police officer and then had a business on the side. My other uncle had a business cleaning service. And another friend of mine, he had a cleaning service. So they would take me out. I would go and clean apartment buildings with my uncle. I would go out with my friends' father, and he would clean the bars locally in Newark where I grew up. And he always had a wad of money in his pocket, right? Now, they never talked about money. It was almost like that's grown folks' conversation, but I was still paying attention. And so one of the things my uncle told me one time is that if you can't work hard for yourself, how are you going to work hard? If you can't work hard for others, how can you work hard for yourself? What does that all have to do with finance? Well, I mean, obviously, things were getting paid for. How are they getting paid? And I got to a point later on, I'm working corporate America and so forth. I started my first company was a company I started where I was importing goods from outside of the country. And that was kind of my introduction to finance. I was like, well, how am I going to import the goods? How am I going to pay for it? How am I going to market it? All these things. And so because my uncle had this import-export company, which he didn't need to share all the information, but I watched him. And so that was kind of my foundation. And then later on, I got into real estate development, again, finance. And then 2008, when the market crashed completely and we kind of lost everything overnight, I was introduced to this world of finance or financial services under the guise of insurance. Didn't understand the importance of that. Right? I really did not understand it. And so through that introduction, that was later on in life too, that I understood that. And so I started a program about 30 years ago called the Vision Board, where I started teaching folks on how to plan for the future. Folks like Kevin. I worked as an adjunct professor, and the Vision Board would have Kevin. So I would say, Kevin, how do you see yourself, when you get older? What do you want to be doing? What's that lifestyle you want to have? And you might say, I want to be a movie producer or whatever it is that you want to be, and how much you think you're going to make. And then we back into how much you need to live, where you're going to live, where you're going to travel to. And that kind of was the foundation of where I am today as a professor doing this program. And then I consider myself a teacher, if you will, an educator. And so when I got into the financial services piece, I just started doing the same thing. How are you going to live your lifestyle? When John talked a little later, my focus is on lifestyle financial planning. That's what I say I do. I'm a specialist in lifestyle financial planning, emphasis on lifestyle.
Interesting.
It's a roundabout way, but that's kind of the genesis and where we are today.
Yeah, I like how you started seeing like the ways to hop into making money, and different ways of making money,
Yeah.
and then being interested not only in the different ways, but also like how to now spread it, disperse it. Like where does it go? Like the curiosity of like talk about the money in the beginning. It's like, oh, where does the money go?
Right.
And then going into that as an adult, it's like, oh, that's how I can move the money and now grow the money. And it's something not talking about money and talking about money it's becomes I guess there's stages. There's always different stages to it. If you were to level it out, how would you level? What would level 1 be? What would level 2 be? And what would level 3 be?
I think level 1 would be what I always start with. What's the lifestyle you envision for yourself? Right? What does that look like? And then level 2 would be, all right, what would be the budget that I need to live that lifestyle? Right? Where do I want to live? Am I married? Do I have kids? Am I going to travel? Am I going to dress? All those things, everything about the lifestyle, right? And then the third piece of it would be, all right, well, what am I going to do to make that amount of money in order to have that? And if you can do that systematically, it tells you. I mean, you can literally look up professions that can give you that amount of that income you want to have. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, but if you start with the end in mind, it allows you to basically create the lifestyle you want in a way that is systematic. Just like you said, level 1, 2, and 3.
I like that you said that too. To start with the end in mind, because it gives you that future aim, the projection of like this is where I'm going to be heading towards.
Right.
And I love that. I love that end in mind concept.
Yeah. Richard, where do you think people fail in order to achieve their financial goals?
Oh, that one's easy. I think the biggest, I think I mentioned earlier, like 73% of the population does not have a budget they follow, right? And you can't reach any goal without having a budget anyway, because a budget is maybe a point in time, but if you don't have a path to get there, a map, if you will, it's never going to happen. It's just a pie in the sky conversation. So all my clients know that I start with, okay, what's the lifestyle? What's the budget? Or ask question, do you have a budget? And they say, yeah. I say, is it written down? No. Oh, you don't have a budget. And then people ask me, well, do you have one? I say, yeah, it's on my phone. I can pull mine up and show you exactly what my budget is. Right? I know when I've overspent because I have it literally is on my phone. And in this day and age, you can't say that you can't put it together because you have too much at your disposal.
Even AI tech is like now you can use that to even help with budgeting.
Exactly.
Like,
you can put that on your phone. There's no reason, no rationale why anyone would tell you, well, I didn't do that. That just means you're lazy. No disrespect to people, but that's just being lazy.
Comfortability.
Yeah.
even people that are scared of like math, like come on, like AI is right there.
Yes.
You know, like it could be helpful to just say like, oh, what is the percentage? Like that could be intimidating to somebody, but then using the technology now that we have could be like, oh, I'm just gonna take this percentage out in order to get here, another percentage out for food, another percentage out for bills, another percent out, etc.
And literally, you can go to ChatGPT, put on the microphone, and talking to it. If you can't write it down or you don't feel that confident, you can literally just speak into the phone, and ChatGPT will actually give you a budget.
Exactly.
There's no rationale at all in this day and age. I don't care how old you are, because I'm a little older, so you get people who are, oh, I don't like technology. I'm like, you're going to go the way of the dinosaur. You really are. You're going to be extinct, and you won't know how it happened. So
it's gonna hit you soon.
Exactly.
I guess like people have a hard time when it comes to finances, being tempted to live the lifestyle they can't afford yet. And you see this a lot. Unfortunately, there's a lot of influencers that are trying to influence their lifestyle, but I always say like external comparisons are always bad. And there's something you mention a lot, and I know you're writing a book about not keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly, they're broke.
Exactly. So we see this whole social media that is trying to sell an image of richness and wealth, and everyone wants that, or they want to kind of try to get there.
Right.
But when you work with somebody that has these expectations and based on comparisons, how do they take that information where their reality hits them like straight in the face?
I mean, you've heard the adage, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Definitely.
That I believe I can't help everybody. I want to help everyone. And I tell a lot of clients, if I want to help you more than you want to be helped, then we have to stop this. Right? Because I care about everybody I meet. I go to the nth degree with everybody I meet. And fundamentally, how I bring people that come to Jesus conversation, so to speak, is the budget. I ask two questions. How much are you spending every month? They tell me what that number is, right? How much you have coming in? Does the two map when you get to here? And you can easily see it. I've had clients, great example, I have one client who was wanted to retire like her parents did at 62, 63, whatever it was. And she was in her 50s. And I said, that's great. And we went through her numbers and everything. And I said, well, you're not going to be able to do this. I said, why? Well, you're spending too much money. She was spending, I'll just give a number out, she's making good money, spending extra $4,000 a month, extra that she didn't need to spend. Or she could have reduced it. And got mad at me and my partner at the time because, we said, well, you need to cut some of these things out in order to, you're not going to be able to retire like your parents did, first of all, because they worked for some big company, they had a pension, they had a 401k, they had Social Security, I'm like, you don't have all those things. And this is just numbers. This is just 1 + 1 = 2. In her case, 1 + 1, did not equal 3. You know what I mean? And so you can only do but so much for people if they're not willing to take responsibility for themselves. I can only draw the picture for you of what reality looks like. But if you don't see it as reality, I can't help.
One of the things that one of the books I've been reading has been talking about like paradigms and principles and the way that they were seeing the way to grow the money was like they saw a different paradigm. Like the principle was they just needed to just cut back some things, and it's hard to communicate the principle sometimes when emotions are
Involved.
Yeah.
The money is about emotion. It really is.
And this is what I was talking about. Like when we have unhealthy comparisons, right? Your client was comparing her situation or her expectation to be retired just like her parents, but the reality was one thing, but also her lifestyle was different than her parents too, right?
Her lifestyle was everything. And theoretically, she could have retired like her parents had she had been paying attention. Now keep in mind, the further you go back, you have people who were born just after the Depression. Our parents, and when money was scarce, and depending upon where you grew up in, you might be economically disadvantaged in communities, and if you're of color, that probably was a standard not that long ago. It's still today too, right? And so you're more likely to hold on tighter to your money. And this day is glorified, like you said, through the TikToks and Instagrams and everything, high life and all these things and it's a falsehood too, because those people are not necessarily living like that. And if they are, it's a small group of people, right?
For what I understand, this country is only 1% of those individuals that can afford extreme luxury. But you look at social media and it looks like anyone can do it,
right?
Or lives that lifestyle,
right?
And I wanted to ask you, for example, individuals that come to you that, for example, are interested in investments, and what kind of investment you suggest depending on the age group?
Well, I'm a big believer in probably three areas in general. Like you'll hear some pundits say that, I'll use Kevin as an example. At his age here, you can take more risk, right? Because your time horizon is so much more in the future, right? So you can go on and buy into a stock you were talking about earlier, or these days they have, I think it's the ETFs. I'm always
ETFs,
yeah, ETF, because they're like index products and so forth, and they do well over time. And theoretically, every product does well over time without someone managing it, because you have what we call the sequence of return. And all that really means that the market goes up and it goes down, and it goes up and goes down. And over time, if you stay in it, you benefit for the time horizon. So one of the things that we talked about, I think you mentioned earlier, putting money aside, they had this thing called dollar cost averaging, right? And all that really means is I bought the stock today, let's say, or the ETS, and it went up. And then I bought some more when it was a little higher. And when it dropped again, I bought some more, and it averages out in a way that is profitable over time. That's one way. And then the other piece of it is now you're looking at, all right, so I want to have a little middle ground, right? So maybe I'm buying into another type of program. I like to, you're going to buy, so first one, the other piece of it is now you're working for somebody. A lot of people don't buy into their 401k plans, right? Now, I'm not a big proponent of 401ks necessarily, but if you have a matching in it, that's free money. So portion goes there, because over time that free money grows. I like Roth products, Roth IRAs. Now, some companies have Roth 401ks. This is just me personally. Not saying everyone should do this. Why I like that, paying after money tax, because in the future that money's not going to be taxed.
Yeah, it's just take it all out.
Just take it all out. You're going to be taxed. But what people see is, oh my God, they're giving me some money and I'm putting money aside. But right now, I think it's something like $33 trillion in transferable funds out there that the government has the ability to tax you on in the future. And you don't know what that tax is going to be.
Exactly.
It could change. And right now we got, what's a $36 trillion deficit. It's actually more, but let's look at that number there. Somewhere down the line, I always ask people, do you think taxes are going to go up or are they going to go down? Exactly. So I'm a big proponent of another place, which would be a Roth IRAs. If you can have it in a company, because it allows you to put more money in, or as an individual Roth, because you can up to $7,000. If you're under 50, you can put up to $7,000 a year. If you're over 50, you can put up to $8,000. It's a catch up. The caveat, though, is that if you're making too much money, like if at an individual, if you're making, I think it's $136,000 a year, you can't have a Roth. Government's nope.
How does it?
Yeah, and if
Gotta
you're
start investing in it,
exactly,
so-
and if you're a couple, you can't have it either if you're making 212. So they got ways to, and then there are other areas like cash value insurance policies, which they don't talk about. We call it the Rockefeller effect. And the Rockefellers, this is a story I heard, buy a insurance policy that has cash value for every Rockefeller is born. What does that mean? So let's say the policy death benefit is $100, let's say, for example, and it would cost you $20 to buy the policy. Just give me an example. $10 pays for the death benefit, $10 goes for cash value. So over time, the cash is compounding.
Yeah.
And in the future, you have the ability to borrow on that money, tax-free. So what the Rockefellers do is they put a bunch of money in there, and in the future, little Rockefellers say, I want to buy a house. It's okay, they borrow money out of that policy. Guess what? When you put money out of policy, you're still getting interest like a bank on your own money. They buy their house, and then they could pay it back if they choose to. When that person dies, it goes back into their trust, and they start the ball rolling over again.
It's generational.
Generational wealth.
Yeah.
So those are the things. It's different
level.
It's different level, but you don't need to be a Rockefeller to do it. It's my point. Yeah. You just got to know about it.
Exactly. You know how to play the game.
Got to know how to play the game,
Yeah.
and so that's really what my goal is. Like to really explain the game to folks and know that if you start now, we could change our community. There was something article I read about people of color in general. And they said it would take us 220 years to catch up to our white counterparts, which pissed me off when I read it.
Yeah, that seems a bit unreal to be honest.
Right. But it would mean that they stopped doing everything and we started doing something as a group. And but I do believe those things are possible with education.
Yeah, there's like for now if we start saving, because saving isn't really a thing now. Like if you start saving, you lose your money more and more than because next year you get the inflation goes, and then the employer is not really going to match inflation.
No.
So you're already going downwards. Even if you stay in the same job year after year without increasing like promotion and that.
This is where it's scary because like industries have this whole culture language of when they give you a raise, like, well, this is what the industry pays, right? So think about that. There's really not a rule. A corporation can do whatever they want.
When they do.
Exactly. They can give a CEO a $20 million bonus, just like they can say, well, I want to give you a 10% raise, right?
It's even lower now, 3%
exactly.
now.
Okay? So now there's the industry, according to corporations, like, well, the industry only pays up to 3%, but inflation is higher every single year.
Right.
So what Richard is trying to also educate us is like, where are you putting your acorns?
Over time, yes.
Over time, exactly. Like, is it beneficial even to work for somebody, knowing that the stigma of that 3% is never going to help you reach out, perhaps break the financial boundaries to be able to do your own escapade in life. But something I do think that, and it's very unfortunate because I do believe that financial education hasn't been well thought out to, people of color,
right,
or like less privileged people, like minorities that come to this country as well. But we have to also, I think I have to be realistic about this too, because unfortunately we do have a disadvantage in terms of like, if this was, like I said, this was during John's wife episode, it's like we live in a situation where other generational wealth, they had a head start hundreds of years ago, right?
Yes.
And their head start didn't start with doing the right thing. It was about stealing resources from, other cultures
Mhm.
and nations, right? We don't have that advantage, and we can't be resented about it. But I do see the big disadvantage in it. Like, it's almost like we have to strive harder in order to obtain the financial or obtain wealth. With that, how much of the resentment, societal resentment, you see people when they come to you? Do you see that they have this disadvantage because of what happened in the past?
I mean, I absolutely see. Well, you mentioned earlier, I think it goes back to literacy, right? If you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. And we don't, our families didn't teach us, right? Like, so I have clients who say things like to me, it's like, I don't want to make my kids rich with, let's say, life insurance specifically, right? And life insurance is one of the easiest ways to ensure that the next generation can have some wealth. One of the easiest ways. And the sooner you get it, the cheaper it is, right? Because it's based on your age and your health, right? And so we have a mindset sometimes that we want to take care of the next. So I had to get it myself. You should get it yourself. And therein lies the conundrum, because we do have some ability to ensure that the next generation has stuff. And I think it goes back to which, so I believe that we've been socialized to believe certain things. We shouldn't take care of each other, or they're just out to take advantage. And this is in our own communities, right? And then when we do strive and get ahead, then we like, oh, they think they're better than us. So we have all this, it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of mentality, right? And so I'm really on my mission, as I told people about I speak at a lot of churches these days and congregations, and I talk, this is my mission to educate folks on this mindset, start thinking differently, or collaborative development, right? You find people who have like minds that are around you. And there's a lot of immigrants who come here to the United States, and all of a sudden, a great example are a lot of the landscapers I see, right? They come first day, they're coming around, or the snow, clean the snow, shoveling. 2 years down the line, they driving up in the truck, they got people working for them. I'm like, and then you talk to them, you talk to folks, because I was curious, what did you do? Well, my brother brought my brother over, my cousin, we lived in this little tiny place, we pulled our money together, we did this, we expanded. Now, they didn't know anything more than anyone else did, right? They just knew that if I got more people to work with, I'm going to make more money. Some parts of it is just very simple math. 1 + 1 = 2. I think in this country here, if you're not an immigrant, you don't have that mentality necessarily, but you have groups here who have been indoctrinated to believe other things, or believe I can't. That whole can't thing, my grandmother would beat us if we said can't. I'm serious. She says, never say can't, try.
Yeah.
And so depending upon where you grew up, and then the voices in your ear, what dictates. There's a book out by this guy. It's called The Psychology of Money. And it talks about philosophically how where you grew up, your experience and your exposure dictates your belief around money. And it's so true. If you grew up in an impoverished area and no one ever talked about it, and you haven't seen anything out of your community, there's a great likelihood you don't believe things are possible. And so I think that, which is why it's so important to step out of your community and talk to the barber who has a business, the local bodega. How did you get started? I did those things, right? A lot of times we don't recognize what's in our own network.
Because we probably only see the large scale, right? Like, what are the Rockefellers?
Exactly.
What are the Vanderbilts?
Exactly. The Joneses. What the Joneses doing. The Joneses, a lot of times are broke. And then, have conversations with you or Kevin. I think, in those type of small conversations, and I'm a big believer in what I call extreme networking. And if I'm seeing somebody's doing something that I've never done before, I'm asking a question. Because I might learn something I didn't know.
It gives me hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say it's this digital generation. Like, it always gives me hope because you're able to communicate messages over to to demographics, and you can tailor it to as well. So, for example, there's a way to like catch up, right? There's new skill sets that are now coming out, and there's some people aren't taking advantage of the skill sets, right? And some people are taking advantage of the skill sets,
Right.
And we're talking about in the beginning, like think of the end in mind, like what is the lifestyle you want? How much do you think is you're gonna spend, and what is that thing that's gonna vehicle that lifestyle? So one of the ways I think in this digital generation is figuring out those new digital skill sets that some communities aren't taking advantage of, right? And it's all new, right? The playing field, like the level ground, kind of got evened out into it.
Yeah, I believe that.
Right? And it's gonna grow. It's gonna grow so tremendously too. Like even like in videography, I work with a very diverse group of teams, and they become like the editors. They become second shooters. They become even lead shooters. We have that collaborative network.
Exactly. Yeah.
John, we have John right here. I want to ask John, like, what are your thoughts about your own financial experience? Like, you work a lot with the community as well. What is it that you see about that financial education, and how much has that helped the community to grow?
Interesting question. I have the pleasure and the honor of being appointed recently to sit on our county, which is Essex County Board of Senior Services. And it's a commission group by the county executive to provide advice as well as to advocate for seniors. So living in denial, but at the same time being in that age group now, have the opportunity to interact with a lot of people, not only my age, some younger that are approaching retirement, and then some of folks who have been in the retirement age group for quite some time. All of the conversations are very interesting. And I'm glad I'm here this morning with Richard in terms of what Richard does, because my wife and I had the opportunity to attend a seminar that Richard recently gave. And we were laughing because when you have relationships with people, like I know Richard is Richard. I've never had a chance to see Richard present in his professional environment. So now, we think of our family, our friends, and people we hang out with. It's just sitting around having a good time and you're having conversation, but you never get to see that professional side. So here my wife and I in this professional seminar with Richard, and man, the nuggets beyond gold that he planted for us that day, things we never thought about. And so when you say my age group, people aren't thinking about when you're gone, people fighting over possibly what you didn't put in place. And like Richard, we talk about documentation beats conversation, that is not there in writing. So there's so many things he brought to our attention, in addition to one of the biggies, our health, that a lot of us don't manage. And we think we're always going to live and don't think about, hey, I might get sick one day. And so Richard, in terms of you working with Medicare, Medicaid, people don't think about having long sustaining life insurance, that if you got ill, that the insurance policy could take care of you. Because one of the things I'm finding out, that there's a misnomer that when you're in or dwelling in one of these senior facilities, that you're there for the rest of your life, which isn't true. There are so many seniors that run out of money and wind up being evicted. And we have a very large population now of seniors that are homeless because they didn't get the financial education from people like Richard. So that's the things that I'm starting to see and be concerned about in our community, because we're living longer because of all the scientific research and what, oh my God, I keep forgetting, I'm the worst. Kevin just said, Kevin is a younger man. So what happens? Young people especially don't take advantage of all, as he said, the digital community. We're moving now. This digitized stuff moves at the speed of thought. I mean, it's unbelievable. And my children and grandchildren make fun of me saying that I have an analog mindset living in a digitized society, and it's funny to me. And so when I put this all together, being around young folks like Kevin and my grandkids, and then being around people my age, older, you really start to think about our community. And when you're seeing all the policies that are coming down federally and things that are happening at the speed of thought, a lot of people just don't have time, especially folks my age and older, and I'm with them. They don't have the patience. Technology that Richard talked about. People just, I'm sitting here. I never thought I would have a Dick Tracy watch. This thing is communicating with me. I think about Dick Tracy, Hemlock Holmes growing up. And so it's people like Richard that we need to embrace in our community, create forums for people like Richard to come in and provide financial literacy education. And what happens, we're so bent on being so fractured that we want to hold everything like this and don't share. And I thank God for Richard opening up to share with his family and friends a few weeks ago, because we got a free meal.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, but we also got a load of information that caused my wife and I to go back and rethink some things that we had not put in place. So, Richard, you could speak to it better than me with Medicare and Medicaid, the trust things that you do. There's a variety of different things that you do that we haven't spoken about. So, if you could, talk about some of those things maybe for our community.
I think there's a lot. I mean, I always go back to where Kevin is, because it starts here, right? Because if you start doing, you share with your friends, and because a lot of times people will follow the leader, if you will. Things like, if you got hurt, you couldn't work, right? Their insurance that covers that. If you start it now, it's cheap to get. Right. I had a friend, give you a great example. A friend of mine who was my business partner, her husband had gotten ill and he couldn't work. But he had this workers' comp insurance that he didn't really know, was in place or hadn't even thought about it. And she looked into it, found out that, she could use it. And he had been out of work, and it basically reimbursed him or her 3 months of lost income plus moving forward. Now, I think at that time he had to be under 60 some odd. He was under that in order to use it, but she didn't know. And you don't know, which is hence insurances. Insurance is all about the what ifs that happen, right? But the younger you start that, the cheaper it is. And now you're still protecting yourself. And as you keep going on, all these things don't stop because you're young. They become even more important as you get older. And because you started sooner, I keep saying it's cheaper, it's more affordable, because what happens a lot of times is the older we get and the longer we live, one of the biggest challenges people who are getting older is, will I outlive my money? Right? John and I were talking about, some people we know, and people think $1 million is a lot of money. It's not a lot of money let's say your income, you live on $100,000 lifestyle, for example, right? You got $1 million, that's only 10 years. Right? Yeah. And let's say it's in the market, right? But the market crashed like 2008 and you just lost 40% of your money. That's 4 years. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so these are the things that we talk about from the cradle to, I don't even call retirement, I call freedom years, right? When you're able to do what you want, when you want, how you want, with whoever you want, and not have to worry about the money. So a lot of this practice that we talk about, the sooner you start it, the easier it is down the line. And when you meet with somebody like me, I ask different questions that you might not have never thought about, right? Because you're 25, you're older, right? It doesn't apply to you right now mentally or intellectually, but down the line, sometimes it hits you right in your face, like, I'm daggone, why didn't I listen? So
yeah, it's like later down the line, I get sick, and it's like, oh dang, why did I get that life?
Exactly. I got 3 kids, I got a wife at home. I mean,
right, literally like that.
Right.
Like, oh,
crap. Right.
I do have a question for both of you guys, John and Richard. Because, for example, financial literacy and financial education is very important. Mm-hmm. But most of the time it doesn't get to the less privileged place. It's unfortunate because of funding, programs that don't exist, or perhaps the initiative of leadership to go into these impoverished areas. Like, for example, how would, and because you guys understand community better than us, how would you start like a program in urban, let's say, where there's a very low meridian income there? Where will you start? Will you start at a school level to start educating people, like kids, on how to multiply money? Because saving and investment, right? I think most people are taught savings, but not investment type. So how would, if you, let's say if I was the governor of this state, and I'll say, guys, here's this budget for you,
Speak to that.
right? How would you? But I want you to, if you can do it in urban, that means you can do it anywhere. Right. So how will you start a program? Where will you start?
So I having a community minded and doing for my entire professional career school age programs. That's how I met Richard. I didn't know Richard. Uh, and someone called me. We were doing a big conference that included youth. And we were bringing, quote unquote, a group of young people from an inner city, not the name where they were coming from, but were considered to be at risk, underserved, and from different inner city communities. And going to be about 300 of them that we were bringing to a seminar to talk about the vision of the future, young people. So we're searching and searching for someone that we think that could handle, because there's one thing of of being a celeb or whatever, but can you walk in a room and really deal with a group of kids and relate to them where they are? Because that's why being able to meet a group of what you said, the inner city or underserved or at-risk population where they are. I pride myself on saying that's what I built my career off of, because I was one of those young people, and I call it paying it forward. So I get this phone call about this guy that wrote a book, Oh God, I Need a Job, which is right here. And so I call him up. I had no idea who Richard was. So I called him up and said, hey, my name is John Blanton. We're doing this youth conference, but it includes adults. And we got this thing called a kids club, and we're going to separate the young people from the adults. And I'm looking for somebody that can speak and talk to the young people about, continuing the community and building it up. And so Richard, I said, I heard you wrote a book, Oh God, I Need a Job. And he said, oh, I could do that. I said, are you sure? And he started telling me his background. Hey, man, look, I'm from Newark. Don't let the book fool you. And we had a nice conversation. So I said to Rich, hey, look, I'm going to let you do this. This is how Rich and I met each other, to find out he was very community oriented. Part of the challenge in our community is, it appears to me, people may get offended, but it's almost like our leaders want to keep an underserved environment so they can keep getting funded. And so there's money in crime. There's money and at-risk kids. There's money in people being poor. So that the development and all kinds of stuff that I see and, at one time lived in. And so when you saw how to answer it, is giving people an opportunity to really come in spirit and truth and address it. And Richard and I have a program called Beyond the Classroom that his financial vision beyond the class, which and you'll hear me talk about this again later, that works with kids. One of the things, again, with young people and at-risk inner city, people aren't relating to them. See, we want to deal with the kids after, my wife says, from going from finger painting to fingerprinting. We want to deal with them on the fingerprinting end. We need to deal with them on the finger painting end. When these boys and walking around with their pants hanging down. And my thing is, I tell them, you drop something, and then they get it, because that represents something culturally that most of them don't even understand from a cultural perspective. Slavery, that's what folks gave you bigger clothes so you couldn't get away. And the other part of it is prison, that somebody owns you. And so we need to spend more time. I once read in a book that says, train up a child in a way that he should go, that when they grow old, they don't depart from it. And that's righteousness, teaching our kids respect. Our kids want to learn. Like, people make all of the, like when you talk about the inner city, I was one of those kids, and people look in and frown. instead of looking and seeing what the possibilities are. When you put somebody under your wing, pay it forward. And Richard has a story about a young man that he adopted that we all thought was going from school to prison. And now young man is doing extremely well. Dealing with underserved people is time, it's work, but it's also the most wonderful opportunity that you could have. You know, if you save one underserved kid a day, that's 5 a week, right? That's 20 a month. Times 12, that's a senior class coming out of your average high school.
You need a good budget to support that, but also a lot of patience, because you got to remember, like, people that are underserved or they don't have that education, you have to understand that they don't know what you know, and they don't live the way you think they should live, because you don't know, the in and out of their traumas, their inner circle, what they have seen in life, what they've been exposed. So sometimes, like you said, like you were just saying, we look at them from the perspective of how they look today, not thinking of how they could look tomorrow, right? You see them with perhaps, dressed up in a way that you think it's not appropriate, but why focus on that perspective when you can actually help them, visualize the perspective one day for themselves, that they can wear a suit and a tie, right? And live in a better place. But that's also a human condition we have, unfortunately, because we are very visual, unfortunately, and I come from the Bronx, right? And my neighborhood wasn't the best neighborhood. And there was a lot of kids doing drugs, 13, 14, behaving in ways. But there's also confusion about, like, being poor and having bad behavior. You can be poor and still be educated, still behave well. I think that's the biggest challenge I guess a lot of these kids have, is that they want to portray the cool or be the tough guy in the neighborhood, but that's not being really tough. Being really tough is like being disciplined, being resilient, getting out of there, overcoming the challenges of where you are to create a new environment. So you guys seem to be working hand to hand to provide this. When you guys go to and work, for example, that young man, the example John was giving us, what was the biggest challenge you guys have to face with this?
With them? So we were running through to Make a Difference. John Stott, we were running this program at this church. I'll say the name. 300 to 400 kids were coming through the program, right? During the course of the year.
500.
Yeah, so he was one of 300 to 500 kids coming through. And the hook was basketball. Right? But you had to come there, do your homework, Bible study, then you could play basketball. I was one of a number of mentors there for. And this young man was part of this group, but he reminded me of me. That's really what it came down to.
And what aspect he reminded you?
My father died when I was 5. His father wasn't around. But he had a drive that I saw. And he was just looking for some guidance. And so I told him once he asked me to come to me, he came to me and wanted to play basketball. He found out I play basketball overseas. And at this point, I was getting to know him. Well, he's 11, 12 at this point. And I said, look, here's what I'll do. I said, I'll agree. He wanted to learn how to play basketball better because he wanted to play in high school. I'll agree to this, but here are my stipulations. My family will become your family. My friends will become your friends. My network become your network. But now you represent me. And if you can't represent me well, I can't help you. The moment that changes, I can't help you. And lastly, this is going to be for life because I don't do anything halfway. He's 11. If you can agree to these 5 things, I'll help you. Call me next week. He called me. Because the fact that he asked me, I knew he was thinking about something, right? And then he called me. And I said, okay. I have told the same thing to family members, blood members, and didn't call me back, right? Because I believe a couple of things. I can help you if you want to be helped. Like I said earlier, I can't want this more than you. That's my premise. I don't care who you are. I can't want this more than you. Even people who are having challenges, if you say I need help, now how we help you and if you got issues, okay, that's separate. But if you ask for help,
Be ready for it.
Be ready for it, right? He was ready for it. And this kid would run through walls for me. If I said run into the wall, he'd run into the wall. And I worked with him 3 nights a week for almost 2 years before he got into high school. Got him on the high school team. I showed up for all the meetings. I became dad. Got him into college, moved him to my house. His going into his second year of college because now we were on the hook for his tuition, right? So we moved to our house. I was like, he's my kid. To this day, this kid he's playing basketball in college, hated basketball the second year because the coach was terrible at the school. I said, well, if you're not going to play basketball, you got to do an exchange program overseas. Scared him to death. Sent him overseas. He went to 12 countries while he was there living. This kid now is graduated from college. He's 29 now. Has traveled around the world, literally around the world. And all the friends that he talks about, like, they can't believe it. Is that the same kid? But he's my kid. And so I have expectations. And what I found most times with kids who are doing what we were saying of it, there's no expectations for them and no one to follow through on the expectations or rules and then keeping your word. Because he told me one time, he says, you're the only man who's ever kept his word. Almost had me crying. I was like, I'm not crying.
And so if I could add to that in terms of coming back to what Richard does professionally, and so rewinding and all of that, the big part of that piece was helping this kid create a vision beyond the classroom.
And purpose.
Right. And so our kids go to school every day. Yeah, some of this stuff is taught, but being a former educator, you look at, and I told people like, folks, badmouth educators, but when you really spend some time in the classroom and you go and you spend a couple of days or a week or so in any school, the best schools or the worst of schools, teachers are challenged because in this digitized society that Kev talks about, so now the kids change class, you got to wait for them to settle down, you got to talk to them about, hey, Kev, put your window, put your different devices. So now that's taking 15 to 20 minutes. You only have 30 minutes. Now you got 15 minutes left. And so who's in front of you for those 15 minutes? And Rich recognized like all these kids, who's in front of you. So he sat with them, taught them financial literacy. Oh God, I need a job. We talk, but we don't walk it. We talk it, but we don't walk it. And so it takes time. And, I could go on and on about what Rich did with this kid from foundation to where he is now. Because with all this stuff he's doing, the kid's traveling all over the world. Can't be traveling without no money. So Rich taught him about credit cards.
And it's not my money.
Right. See, there you go. He taught him about credit cards. He taught him about, the financial aspects of taking them step by step. What do you envision yourself? How much money you got to make? Because people aren't thinking about, especially young people. You start talking to them because the only thing that they see in this digitized society, chink, 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 right? And so, my son, for my grandkid, he has a T-shirt that says, I am my children's ATM machine. I'm going to get one and say, I'm their Zelle carrier, the Cash App carrier, right? Because now it's not even a card anymore. And so when we talk about financial literacy, right, do our underserved people, right? And so I know situations where people that were underserved and things happen in their communities with contamination and infestations. And so they sue. And they wind up getting large sums of money. And no one sat down and talked to them and said, hey, you can't walk in a bank and take out $1 million in cash. There's all type of procedures and stuff. And so what we need in society is that our leaders that are leading these places, right, to be like Richard has a cousin, I won't mention the town, but he knows his town. And so he knows, because there's a book I read, there will always be poor among us. That's not going to change. It's going to be poor, but that doesn't mean they have to suffer. It just said there will always be poor people among it. It doesn't say they're going to suffer. They're going to be violent. They're going to kill. It just says there will always be poor people. So we knowing that, those of us that may have been that, what can we do to help those that are unfortunate? And so he takes them food. He takes them gift cards. He takes them items to help lift them up. And that's what we need to start doing as a society. When we look at what's going on nationally, it's not a lift you up thing anymore. It's we have created a have and have not society. Years ago, there was something called the Warren Commission, and it said that we're living in a society, one black and one white, moving in separate directions. It's not like that anymore. It's the haves and the have not. And we have a godly responsibility to do what Richard is doing to teach financial literacy, not only to those that have, because I believe in paying it forward, and Richard said it earlier in different terms, each one teach one. And so what Richard's saying, when you get equipped with something, see, I can remember growing up where I grew up, we put the P in poor. But we never knew we were poor. I didn't know we were poor until I went to school and learned all these different things about poverty and the ghetto and public housing, all these things you learn later on. But where I grew up, Miss Groves would have a ham, right? Your mom would have some collard greens. Your mom would have some potatoes. My mom might have the rice. And we came together in this underserved community and we ate. And we ate well. And not only that, I tell people that the people can cook. So I learned early on financial literacy of how to be an entrepreneur. My mom baked. I would take her cakes and pies and stuff to school. I was selling them to people, slices for good money that people were paying. And so that was all, but no one ever told us that. Our parents didn't, they knew what they wanted, but it wasn't a way of explaining it. Now we have people like Richard who lived a similar lifestyle. And he said his parents made sure he had. My parents did the same thing, but we lived in a different era. Now we have in an era, and you said, what can we do? We have people like Richard that are willing to give back. The problem becomes, it seems that those that have doesn't want the other halves to come in and show the have-nots how they can live like we are living. And that troubles me a great deal, because why wouldn't we want everyone else to enjoy the lifestyle? Like Rich, when we talk to Rich, always say, man, we're in a good place.
Yeah, we are.
We're in a good place. And we have an obligation to make sure those people that you just asked about in these various urban centers, to make sure as many of them that we can, that they're in a good place. See, you can be poor and still be in a good place.
Definitely. Yeah.
See, you can be poor and still be in a good place.
Definitely.
I would wait for you guys to connect not only to one town, but you can connect to many towns at once, which is through the digitized age too. Like you have a platform, the Men Makes a Difference platform. Like imagine if there's courses that you have from Richard in the Men's Make a Difference platform, in course in there that explains financial literacy. And it gives you the different levels. Level 1, how to save. Right. Level 2, right, how to start investing. And then you have other aspects of like things that you want to like grow the community in. And then after that, it's just basically getting the community to download the app, basically to download or to visit it. And the kids that are, before they go to school, the ones that are on their phone, it would be pretty cool to be like, hey, I'm on the Men's Make a Difference before I get into class.
That's a good idea, because it expands what, like, you guys can be omnipresent, but you can definitely branch out more just through the app. Before we go to Men Make a Difference, I wanted to ask you, oh God, I need a job, the 5 commandments of getting hired. It's going to be all right. First and foremost, what inspired you to write this book, and tell us a little bit about this book.
I was going through a time where I lost a job. Right? Full disclosure, I never wanted to work there. I wanted to be an entrepreneur in mind, body, and soul always. But I lost a job, and I was trying to figure out what to do next, because I found out my wife was pregnant. And when you have obligations like that, responsibilities like that, you get really motivated on how to move things forward very quickly. And so a lot of this is my conversations with a higher presence, my own mindset, so forth. And so I started out by saying, oh God, I need a job, because I didn't want to specify X, right? Because I wanted people to get it. So in the book, I talk about the 5 commandments. One is thou shalt love thyself. thou shalt pay attention, thou shalt tell thy story, thou shalt fill a need, and then the last one was thou shalt, let's forget them. Uh, uh, thou shalt plan to succeed, right? And so the book has me talking to this, this myself, my spirit, whatever, as I go through this journey of trying to, one, understand myself. It was really self-evaluation, right? That thou shalt understand certain things. And the reason I put that, so I always start back with my mom. And my mother is my hero. And growing up with things that I just watched her keep moving forward, and so in my house, you could never say can't, you could never say stop, you could never say it's going to be too hard. When I was 14 or 15, someone burned our house down. Never saw my mother cry about she's baby's going to be all right. My father died when I was 5 years old. My mother just kept moving on, right? Raising 3 kids, right? Then my grandmother and grandpa moved in the house with us. They were the same focus. Education was the way out. My mother had a 8th grade education when I was in high school. When I graduated from high school, she went back to college. My mother got her undergraduate degree from King College here, then went on to get a master's degree. I don't have a master's degree yet, but I keep threatening to go back and get something, right? Just because I'm competitive. And so the book is really prompted about my experience. I talk about experience and exposure. It's my mom, never say give up, never say die. And she was very faithful, believed in God and believed. And, you ask and you shall receive. And I used to always tell my mom, it's not happening fast enough. Can you have a conversation with God? To move things along here. So that was kind of the foundation of the book. The impetus of the book was my mom. And my mom she gave block parties for people underserved, food given out to, and passed out on my sister was doing the same thing. So a lot of this giving back was because of what I received, pass it forward. And that's all the book really was, or is, passing these things forward. In your words, how do I get this out to more folks to understand that, humble beginnings, and my mother and my grandparents, no one ever said that it could not be done. They just try. What's the worst that could happen if you try? And what's the best that could happen if you try? So that's the foundation of the book, just passing what I've learned over the years forward, and the hope that, somebody else sees the possibilities and then shares it, and then continues a domino effect.
I see how your mother was a beacon of light for you in your life, and that resilience, right?
Yeah.
The resilience is what keeps us being mentally strong to achieve things, and also being realistic. Everything that is good takes a lot of work,
Absolutely.
right? So and sacrifices you have to make. And it's interesting because when we think about me and Kevin, we talk about the ethics of podcast, and I'm always, it's like it's good to have the slow burn,
Right.
because also you will learn how to also manage fame,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you're able to go, let's say tomorrow this thing goes and becomes like Joe Rogan, would we be able to handle that when we haven't gone through the whole process of stages of growth, right? Because also there's the psychology of growth,
Right.
You acquire new resiliences as you step into different moments of adaptation. So I see that your mother did a great job of, not only planting the seed of growth and possibilities, or endless possibilities. Exactly. But also that she was an example to follow. And like what you did with the young man is a reflection of what your mother would have done too. But more importantly, I do see the nobility that are in you guys. Both.
Mm-hmm.
You have a noble heart. Not a lot of people have that. And a lot of people lose that because of, their traumas overtake their love, right? And when your love gets hostage, resentfulness comes in, and starts, stinking anything that approaches. And I wanted to ask you guys about, um, because we're talking about men make a difference. Right? You guys definitely are making a difference. How, what has been the greatest challenge for a man make a difference so far?
I'm gonna let him speak, but I just before he does, I want to give John Blanton his props, right? Because he doesn't always like to be seen. You hear him refer to him, Richard, but he's a catalyst for all. Nick just would not be here as it is today without John. And I won't even say he's a quiet storm. He's not a quiet storm. No matter how he would like to portray, he is not a quiet. Don't let him tell you that he's not a quiet storm. But he is a powerful, wonderful storm, a storm of inspiration, faith, and you'll hear him always talk about. I read this book, and when he starts to go, I know where he's going with it. This book that I read, right, and you'll hear it, and you'll hear statements out of it, and but the passion and his love and his compassion is what I love about this guy, and we become great friends and brothers as a result of this. And so I'll let him speak to the challenges on this, but I wanted to make that very clear, my brother, about you. Okay? So.
Mike is all yours, John.
I just want to rewind back to 2007 when Rich was working with me initially, and it wasn't anything formally. It was just as dads. In the community I live in, there's a lot of high profile and wealthy individuals. And as Rich said, we're in a good place. I'm not one of those wealthy individuals, but I think I'm rich.
Wealth is a mindset.
Yes, just because of who my daddy is. And as we wind, we're sitting around, Rich and I chatting, and again, a lot of men wanting to be men. And that is so important because men get such a beat up image all the time. We're often frowned upon, and there's a lot of good men, solid men, not because they were born as males, but solid men in communities all over the world. And so there was a group of solid men who wanted to not just be men, but wanted to be it fathers or surrogate fathers to young men and women that were growing up in our community. And it was through sports. For whatever reason, sports, man, is the biggest hook. If you want to get kids, sports is the big hook. Football and basketball are those high profile hooks. And in this case, it was football. And my son was one of the young kids at the time wanting to be involved in this football team. And there was one, I won't call names and all of that, because that's not what it's about. There were individuals who were former professional athletes. And because he's here, which included Rich. And so one of the guys had a Super Bowl ring. And so here we are at football practice and we're watching what's going on. And I'm a fundamental guy. I don't know football, but I definitely know how to make a kid faster. And so I'm watching some of the stuff being a former runner. And I'm like, this doesn't look right to me. And so we challenged the guy to say, hey, look, man, why don't you ask him, can you volunteer? And so we were kind of told, like, you can help if you wash dishes and mop floors. That was basically, you got to go through some kind of ranks. And we're looking like, what? Makes no sense. All this knowledge that we're bringing in, and the folks, not to frown on them, our thing was like, can't we do better? And so from that came Men Make a Difference. And so Men Make a Difference was founded under the mission statement of empowering and challenging men to be the priests, providers, and protectors of their families, their community, and their personal development. Very simple. Now, there's a lot of male organizations out there. I'm a part of the best fraternity in the world. I tell people I got on the colors today, royal blue and white.
I just
Blue fire to my brothers.
I've been hearing about the best fraternity in the world.
we got some little battering to go along, but I say that because when you're a part of other things, be it a churches, men group, fraternities, the Masons or other group, people start saying, why would you want to create something else? And my response to everybody is that, first of all, everybody don't go to college. So if you don't go to college, you can't be a part of one of what we call divine nine organizations. Everybody doesn't want to be a Mason because of what they think. Everybody doesn't go to church. That's a reality. But every man can make a difference. And regardless how poor or how rich. And the reason why I came to that conclusion is because I'm sitting in this big men's, fathers, hundreds of men, all walks of life, GEDs to PhDs. And every one of the men that were taking the mic or standing up to tell their story about wanting to be a father or a man in a child's life. In some cases, guys being young like we all were at one time, teenage guys, got a young lady pregnant, scared, didn't know what to do, went missing in action. And then other guys got in trouble, got involved with the dynamics in their community, wound up serving some time. Other guys were in a relationship and it didn't work out. And female carried stuff. And so all of these examples, I'm sitting there listening and I'm thinking about myself as a blessed man with a wonderful wife, at the time, 2 wonderful children. And I'm listening to these guys who all wanted to be in their children's lives. And the moms were telling them the dad was dead or he wasn't no good. I mean, it was just stories that just weren't true. And these guys wanted to get back involved in their children's lives. And so at that moment, I realized I have to help to do something about it. Teamed up with Rich and some other guys, and fast forward, here we are in 2025, and I read this book every day that Richard said I would refer to. I call it Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. And then there, tucked away, there's some things that says how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And that for there, the Lord will bestow his blessings, even life forevermore. Here we are in unity. Goes on to say 2 are better than 1 because they have a great return on their labor. If one falls down, other can help them pick them up. And a cord of 3 strands, it's 4 of us. It's not easily broken. And then there's one that people say a lot, and it's kind of insult to me. Iron sharpens iron, right? Because in that correlates murder and what happens in that story. You know, people don't understand. There was a murder committed with that when some questions was asked of this dude who killed his brother. But I say that to say iron can sharpen iron as one man sharpens another, because when we come together as men, stuff sparks. So Rich is actually the only person left from the original group of men. People come to tables with ulterior motives and agendas. I got an agenda. I just tell you what it is. You know, and Rich said, I'm going to tell you what it is. You never have to guess where I'm coming from. And I tell people that yes is yes, my no is my no. And because of that, people have labeled me as angry, the mad black man, and all of these things that men at times get labeled as. And it really doesn't matter to me at this season of my life. And, you know, Martin once says, I've been to the mountaintop and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. God has showed me the promised land and what it could be like. And doesn't matter to me what people think about me at this season of my life. I'm not trying to prove or please anybody except for that guy I read about in Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. And so for all that, would men make a difference? Our big challenge is, first of all, trying to get other men to be true men and not to be scared. And that's real. And men get upset when you say that, but it's real. If we stepped up as the true creator and be the Adams of our communities, our queens, our Eves are going to follow us. There's no question. And Rich and I have shown that over and over and over again. And so, in being a man, there's a responsibility. If you want to be the king of your house, right? How are you treating your queen?
I have a question for each one of you, and Richard and John. In today's society, because what do you believe is man's biggest struggle? And
Being a man.
I know everyone's going to have their own opinion, but let's share that, because I don't think a lot of people. We have a lot of society today empowers a lot of different things, but very little you hear about men empowerment, because there's a resentfulness in society that men have been for so many years. But that's not my fault, right? I didn't do that. I definitely didn't commit that crime for that. I shouldn't be punished for that, and neither you, gentlemen. But I want to hear from you guys. What's your opinion? I don't know who wants to start, Kevin. What is your opinion about men's biggest struggle in today's society?
Biggest struggle.
Or anyone that wants to take it. That way you.
And Kev, I won't talk too long, and I said it, while you were talking. It's really being a man. There's so many obstacles that's placed in front of men for the definition of what society say a man is versus what that book I read, Basic Instruction Before Leaving Earth, says a man is. And because of the obstacles that are placed before men, before males, especially men of color, there's all kind of perceptions out there that aren't true. And Men Make a Difference is a good example of that. We were labeled in the town where we live as black mad men, which definitely is not the case. This logo I have here, it was initially MMAD, but now it's M squared AD because of the perception. And the group was multicultural, multiracial, multi-generational, multi-ethnic, all of the things that come along with it. And as we started to get together as men to realize all of the things that we have in common, we started to take away some of those challenges of how you're being perceived, especially men of color. And so I would say the biggest challenge for me is being the man of who I am and being looked at as who I really am, and not coming to some conclusion about who I am and not sitting with me like we're doing here and hear my heart. That's the biggest challenge of being a man. People aren't listening to other men's heart. And until you do that and find out where that man is coming from and why his heart is the way his heart is, we'll always live in a society like we're living in. And leaders that are men that try to assimilate or acclimate into those situations that are in leadership positions and the politics and everything else goes along with the pressure. And that's what I'm saying. The hardest role is being a man, because things start coming at you that don't allow you the pressure. Let's look at Washington, D.C. and all those men. They male by definition, but when you look at what should be happening from a righteous standpoint and standing up as men to say no, how in the world that one guy gonna come in here and we're on it and beat up 70 of us? He got to know some serious stuff, man, to get 70. That stuff people watch on TV, that ain't true, because somewhere along the line, because there's gonna be somebody in the crowd that knows something too. And so that's what being a man, stand up, for your own self, but then for your family and your community. And so you may not have a family, but everybody has a community. And that's my thing. Stand up for righteousness, even if you have to stand alone. But that's the hardest thing of a man, especially a man of color. Rich, I'll hand it over to you because I've talked too much.
No, that was great. I loved it. Yeah, that was awesome.
I thought it was a great presentation.
Yeah. I think expectations are the biggest thing. I mean, we have a divide. And I had a great conversation with my daughter. This is a really good example. And I had said there's a difference between how men react, how women react. My daughter took it as a negative thing, that the way women react is negative. And I didn't mean it that way, obviously, because I'm not trying to raise a child a girl in particular, that doesn't have strength. And I used to tell her when she was 2, I said, "You are strong, smart, powerful." And she'll say it to this day. She's 28 today.
you know. And so I think that we go back to what we keep seeing in TikTok or technology. So you are every day you are hit with so many images that reflect different things, right? That you're either trying to keep up with, and you can't possibly keep up with things. Like, used to be that, from a man's perspective, you know, just in a black community, right? Let's just use that or a male community. Uh, of color community, I'll say, there's this image that we don't participate with our kids, we don't stay with our women and whatnot. And I recently saw a statistic that's not true. We are most likely to be with our kids, stay with our women, marry, all these things. And so we're fighting against an identity that's not real, and goes back to our literacy of these things too. We get so many more negative information than we do positive information about who we are as a people, and John mentioned earlier, like this whole angry black man thing or angry person of color, whatever that is, right? That's the first thing is said. So you're dealing with that as well. Machoism, and dealing that with your significant other, right? So you had all these things that you're trying to deal with that are not a true indication of who you are as a person, but we've been socialized to believe this. So I went through this thing called Landmark Forum years ago. You may have heard about it. And Landmark Forum was basically group boot camp, psychological boot camp, and group therapy, so to speak. And I remember being there, and this one guy started talking about he hadn't spoken to his father in 20 years. And on the board, they talked about who you are today has a lot to do with something that happened to you, trauma that might have been at 5 years old that you hold on to for years. So in this guy's case, he had this argument with his dad when he was 17 or 18, and so much so pissed off, joined the military because he wanted to get killed in the military so that, his father would feel bad about it. Now, it didn't happen. He didn't die and so forth, but hadn't spoken to his father in 20 years. I don't know where all that came from, right? Somewhere along the line, someone said something, did something where he held on to this. And that day he called his father up and apologized. His father said, well, what happened? What's going on? Because he hadn't spoken to him. And they made up that day, right? Unspoken words, right? Because, his father talked to the kids. But I think that's a lot of the problem, unspoken words. We don't talk like this. Men don't typically share what's going on with them, or I got to hold it in. I think we're getting better at it. But that doesn't mean that you're taking on a woman's perspective necessarily either, right? They always say women speak more. I don't know if that's all true or not, but I had to think more about it because of my daughter, about the words we choose, because words matter, right? And this sometimes poor communication that we have because we don't know the other side. And I think a lot of time that's the challenge with men, because you don't know the other side. And I think that's our challenge sometimes.
And Kevin, rewinding again about a man, I often think about where I grew up, public housing and transparency. And as I grew older, didn't realize that our home was one of the few homes that did have the male presence, which gives, again, credence to some of the stuff as Rich said that people have just made up because nobody ever investigated where that male was, why that male wasn't there. And when you start scratching beneath the surface, so many reasons as to why. I'm blessed mommy and dad was there. My dad wore a size 14 ring on his pinky. So you can imagine the size of this man. Until this day, I haven't met a man stronger than my dad. I always reflect on the story that my dad had this pickup truck, and he got a used refrigerator from someone, and he brings it home and backs the truck into his normal parking spot. I'm the youngest of the six. It was 8 of us. I'm the youngest of the 6 other boys. He calls us to come get this refrigerator. And we're struggling with this. Some of our friends try to come and help us. Back in the day, those motors and everything, they were heavy. But we're struggling. My dad, boy, move out the way. Dad grabs this refrigerator, picks it up, takes it into our house. Until this day, people still talk about, him doing something. And so I think about that man, not only strong physically, but strong as a man spiritually. The way I watched him work and come home, but made my mom his priority every day. And my mother day was, Margaret, how was your day? And like you're sitting there, as I look back and I said, man, Dad was out working all day long. And like, I'm thinking mom should be saying like, how is it? And so I look at how he prioritized her and he loved her, but and vice versa. I look at today, we had dinner every day together. It was just those times and your parents called you and you coming in and everybody sitting out eating a dinner. So I flip it on my mom now that dad was served first. And we were always sitting there like we were athletes and you're hungry, and you're trying to wonder as a young kid, why is it? And as you get older, you realize this was the man that was taking care of the family. If he ain't got no strength, you dudes ain't going out and doing what he does. And so I look, but we all ate. We ate well, didn't know we were poor. And so I reflect on that a lot in terms of today, the biggest challenge is trying to be that same man. We get caught up, and Rich and I meet with men and their wives all the time, people in counseling, that they think it's all about the money, right? And that book, again, that I read, The Love of Money, is people always say the money is the root. No, that book says the love of it, not money. Money good. Money's good. We need it today, but the love of it becomes evil. And we chase it, like Richard said, we're chasing the Joneses, and they broke. And I always told my kids growing up, like, stop worrying about other people have because you don't know how they got it. And so worry about your stuff, what you could do. And so that's what we try to teach men and being a man. So many women say, I got 2 sons. I don't care about how much money he makes. I just want him to be here to teach his son how to be a man and to go into man because I can't tell him that. I can do that with our girl, but I can't do that. Now, a lot of mothers have been very successful at doing that, and God bless those queens that have done that. People say women aren't in charge. Oh, they in charge because all of us sitting here, if our moms decided that they weren't going to be in charge and not birth us, none of us would be sitting here. So God gave that reason for whatever reason that they're in charge to decide whether or not we're coming or not. And so I want to say again, you asked a question about that's my big thing. Being a man. Being a man, we put our ladies out. We put women out. Now, nothing against our ladies, but again, I just believe in my heart that if Adam steps up, Eve is going to follow. And it doesn't even mean if she's in charge. Like my wife, people say to me, my wife has a doctorate degree now. I was blessed to go to college, get degrees and things of that nature. I didn't want to get the degrees that she had. Wasn't interested in it. And now people saying to me, how do you allow your wife to do this before you? What? And you see my facial expression. It's a partnership. Like, that's my queen, and she still honors me as her king. And you hear her say that. And so we got to start looking at what's the challenge before us with men and help them. Like I said earlier, there's going to always be poor among us. There's going to always be men among us, but we have to teach them how to be men, like the young man that Richard took under his wing. He was a little boy at the time. And now you look at him and you see him, and if you knew his story, you'd be like, my God, that's what being a man is all about. You don't have to be someone's father to help them become a man. And as a result of that, people always wonder why young people want to gravitate towards us and have conversations and stuff, because we're going to tell them the truth. And Richard said, our young men say, we don't keep our word. See, and that's part of being a man. We got to keep our word.
I wanted to, he said one thing that's really important too, talking about the challenge of men. And I think the other thing is thinking you have to do it all.
That's
right?
cool.
Think you got to do it all. He mentioned the word partnership. When you bring somebody into your life, it's a partnership. And if that person also you bring in doesn't recognize it, it's not going to be a good partnership. You know what I'm saying? That all of a sudden the pressure of you have to be everything. It's not in this day and age. It used to be, you could live on one salary, put your kid through school, live a great life. You can't do that now. I mean, your age group now, buying a home. I was talking to, I lived in Hoboken, right? And I had a condo. I was talking to one of my buddy's sons, around your age, a little older maybe. And I said, yeah, we had a condo. We paid $113,000 for it in Hoboken. 2-bedroom apartment, parking underground. He's like, He said to me, this kid said to me, he says, now you can buy a parking space for $80,000. Teresa, the parking space, not the condo, the parking space, right? And I said, that can't be true. He says, no, Richard, it's true. I'm like, so how do you go and buy now the house condo maybe 700,000 plus a parking space, $80,000? How can you do that this day and age? Because you're not making that kind of money. Everybody's not. Let me put it this way: not everybody's making that kind of money, right? So I believe it puts more pressure on you if you're trying to be that man, quote unquote, and the partner is saying, well, you're supposed to do this. No, it's a partnership. We are supposed to do this, because I think that also causes the challenges. I think it was this 50% of all marriages is because of finance.
That's a true statistic.
That's a true statistic, right?
And Rich talks about that pressure. And I'm thinking as he talking to partnership. So we're all sitting here, and Richard and I married, the partnership. Okay. And so I hear people say her phone bill, his utility bill, so forth. And I say to people like, if they shut the phone off, they just don't shut the phone off on him. They shut the phone off on everybody. If the gas, the electricity goes out, it just don't go out on her. It goes out on everybody. If you got one car and the car note's not being paid and the repossession guys come and take it, nobody has transportation. It's just not her. And so when we think about it and all that pressure, and I think it's unreasonably put on men.
But also it's also.
So one of the things that I struggle with as a young man is sticking to principles versus emotions. Right? Like that's one of the things I struggle with in my family as well. But I try to stick to I don't try. I stick to the principle, right? Like I bring the principle upon it, and I say, how do we bring it back into play? Because that's what we're supposed to stick on, the truth of certain stuff, right? Like we had to stick not on certain stuff, we had to stick on the truth, and from there, it's just getting the perspective to it. And I struggle with not being too, I guess, direct. Like I guess they call it too direct, where it's like toxic masculinity is just masculinity.
Right.
I'm just
There's a word for it, right? Like
yeah, and I'm just being direct with the way, and I'm just showing there's different outcomes, there's different ways that we could go about it. But it's like now they just want us softer. Like they just want me to just be compromisable almost all the time, and I think it's not about compromising. It's about finding the solution towards any problem and things like that.
the question here is when another person is requesting a change, are they being an I or a we? Right? Because the person that requests a change and is saying you, and it's not inclusiveness, then the issue is not the person asking. The issue is you. Because if you created rules that are healthy for you, then the opinion of that other person is not going to, it's not that it's not going to matter, but they need to understand what are your rules in life. Because we all have these rules in life, right? And we have to be respectful of one another on those rules.
Right.
So if they understand that that's a rule you implemented and they should know well, when they ask the question, maybe they need to think about how to rephrase it to get your attention or to make you part of it. Because I think that's one of the number one problems is having these expectations, right? That you want other people to do or manage without asking yourself, is it doable? How would that change the relationship itself? Because when you produce a change as a couple, everything around you changes, right? So when you ask that your partner changes, are you really asking them to change for the relationship or for your benefit? And I think that's the number one question about men. Something you said, Richard, about people creating rules, and we can create the healthiest rules as a couple, as an individual, but if our communication is not as good as the rule, everything goes under the sink. And the reason being is because it's not the form, right? It's not the message, it's the form. And if the form is not as good as the message, and this is something I teach a lot, it's like you can have all the greatest ideas, but if your communication is not inclusiveness, it's not about us, you're gonna lose your audience.
Right.
And once you lose your audience, it's like all you have is your own. You got to listen to yourself. How did I approach this
Right.
issue? And I do see a lot of problems with that. It's like why? The question is, if you desire change so much, why don't you start with yourself first? What is it that you are willing to compromise for the relation before you ask somebody else to do it? Because you only control your part of the trade,
Right.
and then
Right.
your partner controls the other. And it could be influential because if you as a couple change without asking the other person to do it, the other person's gonna notice, right? And they might want to be triggered to say like, "Oh, I see things are better because they took the initiative to change on this stuff." Now, should I do the same? Because I'm pretty sure there are things that he wants, right? Or that he needs or she needs. Can I do that for the relationship and for myself? You never do things for other people. Do it for you and do it because there's something that is compatible that you both want at the end of the day. And I think that's we have to look at what rules that we create and let people know about those rules. Right? And trust me, when you create these healthy rules, people would walk away from your life on their own. And the reason being is because they understand that certain convictions are non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Because they are who you are as a person. That's like, for example, Kevin, you have a lot of energy. Imagine one day you have a couple that says, "Well, I don't want your exercise because I want you here 24/7."
Yeah.
How will you feel about that? Right?
Yeah, right. I have to talk it through, but then that's when I'll bring like more over the logistics more than the emotions, which is something I had to deprogram myself on from the environment of just having like it's so like ladies they talk more emotionally, guys talk more logistically, right? And if I were to bring the emotions of like, oh, I'm gonna be there 24/7. Oh dang, I don't want to be there. Or it's like, oh yeah, I want to be there all the time.
Right.
Right? It might be overwhelming. But if I bring over the logistics, right, I could bring over like, okay, if you guys want me there for 24/7, this is how much it'll be. Then this is what you can expect afterwards, and things like that. Like the logistics is something that logistics and not bringing the emotions but understanding the emotions, right? Like logistics not bringing the emotions but understanding the emotions and communicating that forward is something that's just hard to build into.
Yeah, perhaps it's hard because sometimes we gotta give messages that the other person is not willing to listen to. So communication is a two-way street. You can communicate as nice as you want, but if the other person already is not listening to understand, they're listening to for their own promotion of their own benefit, their own good, and their own ego, and to be combative. You shouldn't worry about that. If you said it because you want to honor yourself and you want to honor the relation and you want to bring dignity to yourself, you can't bring dignity to a relationship if you don't dignify yourself. And if you don't feel good with yourself, it's going to be really hard for you to feel good in an environment where you know that if you do certain things that you love, well, but the other person dislikes, you're fighting a system that is not fair. And that environment, slowly but surely, is going to consume you.
The resentment.
And resentment
Yeah.
because you're going to say, I do all this effort and that doesn't get seen as much as what I don't do or what I don't have. And I think being part of a man is being okay with your deficiencies, understanding that and be clear with them. Look, I could get better on maybe all these things, but there's certain things that I know in my, like you're 25, in my 25 years that I can't get better. Are you able to accept that? Right? And put it like a poker part of your aces on the table. Because with those cards are what you're going to play for the rest of your life. And like I said, you might get better. That doesn't mean you're going to do a 180 and change. And the same way when you're in a relationship, accept also the deficiencies of others. And the rule is very simple, right? If your couple is doing 80% right and 20% things that you don't like or don't agree, which one outweighs the 80%, right? But if think about that's like you're having this bottle, right? And let's say the water's up to here and you're thirsty. You have so much to drink from, but your focus because of your ego and pride, it's just focused on that little bit you don't have where you can drink all of it. That is the issue. Because now you have to change your own focus and say, oh, does that 20% really matter?
It's been true. I've had conversation with friends of mine, their wives, about my boys, and I say one thing to them. I said, "You knew who you married." I said, "Why are you expecting that there to be a change at this point in time?" Well, Richard, I said, "I'm just telling," and I would tell my friends, "Don't ask me if you don't want the truth. I'm not one of those people that's going to sugarcoat things. I've never been that guy. Don't ask." And I think a lot of times that's the challenge. Sometimes your expectations are unrealistic when you already knew and know this is not the case. And what I've also told friends, in discussions, I always tell people words matter. I'm in the business of speaking to people all the time, and words can be taken out of context. And I always say, like, I never speak in anger. I will always pause and I ask myself the first question I ask is, how important is this to me that I need to argue at this point? Right? Taking my ego out of it. Right? It's not my trying to win, it's just what's right. If it's right, it doesn't matter, anything else doesn't matter. I mean, what's right? Let's do what's right at the end of the day. But I don't think a lot of people think that way. I think, particularly in relationships, if they're young relationships versus older relationships, you're getting to know, at your age, you're getting to know that person. I've been with my wife almost 35 years married this year, right? So I have really good foundation who this person is and our deficiencies. We all have those things. And like you said, do we accept those things? Or are there some of those deficiencies that we've known right from the beginning that they've said they're willing to make those changes and they still don't? Now that's a problem.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that's I think we just got to learn on how to, and especially men, we got to learn to be okay with those uncontrollable factors,
Right.
Because at the end of the day, what is it that we are trying to promote ourselves as men? Because there's a imagination that we have to be nearly perfect providers, fathers, friends, sons, all these different things. All we need to meet all these different criteria. But realistically, who meets them? Exactly. So when we go, when we find our own bond and identity in ourselves, are we okay with ourselves to start with, right? And we gotta ask ourselves that question because then we could be honest. Like let's say my younger self when I was in college or my 20s, and I meet a woman that was well established, but I wasn't. When I go to the table, I need to be honest about those things, right? And say, hey, yeah, I don't make $300,000 like you make a year.
Right.
I just make probably 60. But what I can offer you is things that you won't find in your money, right? Because I'm willing to provide in that aspect. But don't get me wrong, my effort on the little that I have will be all yours. So which one is more dignifying? That if I have excess and give you the little that I have, or the little that I have and give you everything. So also on that perspective, we gotta be wise about because if somebody gives you everything with very little, that means when they have a lot, they will continue to give you.
Right. Expectations. That's all. That's so unrealistic expectations. And I think it's also
I think we know now in this country that women, by and large, are more educated than men are these days, right? Or becoming more and more
And
educated.
there's more women.
And there's more women. And in our communities, particularly of color, that community, there's more of them with masters and so forth, higher educated individuals. And I think because of that, sometimes could be looking at a person who's, let's say, a blue collar worker. It's not
A plumber.
but they're doing very well for themselves, right? And that can be seen as not as
Status.
Status.
There we go. Right.
Elite too.
Exactly. And that person could be fundamentally brilliant, doesn't have that high degree necessarily, but as intelligent as anyone else. And so I tell folks, so you can't go by what people do with regards to how intelligent they may be, because the two are not mutually exclusive or inclusive. Just because you went to college or it has really nothing to do how intelligent someone is. But I think we get caught up in labels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's like those are the challenges. Like keep coming back to the challenges of being, the man, and unjustifiably, we were not created with egos and pride. That book I talk about talks about that.
Right.
Pride and ego has destroyed so many men and have never, ever, ever had to spend any moment of time of accountability for destroying men with egos and pride. And so a part of being a man is that you don't have to win all the time. That, I'm a former athlete, Rich is a former athlete, and I was blessed, like being in a good place to compete at a real high level and meet wonderful people at the time. Same thing with my wife, you met her. Got a chance to meet a lot of people. But sometimes losing is better than winning.
I want to piggyback on that because we got to talk about men when they date a woman. They're trying to win through impression because unfortunately we're taught to impress women, and we do it because we want to do it in good faith to build the relationship, right? So you want to, like birds, right? You want to create the nicest nest for them,
Right.
But sometimes we go so much out of our way that we can't sustain and maintain that level of finances to continue to nurture, I guess that niche to conquer a woman. So I think we men have to be more realistic also with that. If we can't afford the Michelin star restaurant, if that woman is willing to go to you to the food truck, that's your breadwinner as a couple. And the reason being is because she's committed for not what you have, but what you can offer, what you can become, and for who you are in that moment.
Right.
And I think that's very important because even religiously, how we grow in religion is also important, or our relationship with God. It's like everyone has their modus operandi, right? And we have to be respectful on how people develop and evolve in these things, right? Just like how we evolve financially. Some people pick it up quick, some people go slower, right? But again, is your couple patient enough to understand that everyone has an individual call and an individual process? So I do think we men have to be honest with ourselves. Like when we meet somebody, if we can't impress ourselves and can't be real with ourselves, it's going to be very hard to be real with everyone else. And I think that damages the image of what a man is too.
But I've been out of the game a long time. So as I said, I've been married. I'm 35 years this year. Been with her 38 years. So it's been a long time. And I would not like to be out there. Wouldn't like it at all, given some of the things we're talking about. Expectations are so high. There's a lot of pressure on men.
And competition.
To be more, maybe who you are at this moment in time, and then the expectations for you to be more because of some of the things we're talking about. The digital world is showing this way of living and what people are doing and how well they're doing, and I think it's a false. I really do think by and large it's a false.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm just laughing because there's a portrayment of men need to be at the gym looking muscular,
Right.
but have a lot of wealth,
Right.
take you to places unseen, give you romanticism every day. It's like almost like a fairy tale story that you have to live day by day, but nobody's talking about what happens behind the curtains, like the hard work, the hours. You put hours in the gym. That means you're not somewhere else,
Right.
right? If you're working and making all that wealth, that means you're not home.
Mhm.
Like, we have to be realistic about
Right.
what it takes to create all these different expectations. But then the complaint is, you're never here. But how do you want me to be here if I'm always doing
Right. If I have to do this to get that.
exactly?
And so I did an exercise. Well, we did an exercise with a group of men about what you do with your spare time. And
Most men
so,
don't.
right. And so there was GEDs and PhDs in the room. And so as we went along the exercise, there were things they had to compromise, right? And make a long story short, when we got finished with the exercise, well, one part of it was what you don't compromise and what you will do with your spare time. So at the end of this exercise, make a long story short, the main thing that people said they wouldn't compromise was their God and their family. Those were two top of the list. So when you look at what they were doing with their spare time, none of it had to do with their God and their family. And so you look at that image and this exercise we was doing to a man. What makes it? And it goes back to empowering them to be the priest, provider, protector of their family, their community, their
Like
personal
Superman.
development. You said it. Hey man, you married, you got 2 young sons, and you out playing golf all day with a group of and your son has football, and I could go through just listen, and the women are saying like, no, this is what I want. And as I learn now, even listening to the younger people, Kevin's age now, and I don't even want my sons are older than you, Kevin. And I listen to their conversations, and women compromise a lot now. And it's because of what we said, there's so few men. And then when you start like thinking of what society's definition of a man, that definition start to narrow it, it makes it smaller and smaller. And then when you bring to a table something that you talked about, Doc, unconscious bias. Now that the lady may bring to the table for whatever, that pool is so small for them that when they look, they start competing, and then they got to open it back up and start compromising with things that they really probably wouldn't have settled for under equal situations. And that's what I see listening to the conversations. And the other concern that I have is that book that I read, marriage was ordained.
You want to hear something funny? The number one thing, we did a study where we were looking at like in a dating app, in several dating apps. What was the number one request for females to find a male partner? And the number one was no drama.
No drama?
Yes. So
Wow.
So like what they what they were trying to explain was
No baby mamas.
no baby mamas, but they had they have babies themselves.
Right.
So there's a lot of double standard, unfortunately.
My
Because
God.
but the other thing was the drama of of life, right? Like it's like, and I asked myself, if anyone is in this app, is because there's something that is stopping you from having a relationship with someone, because you live in a world that you are exposed every day to different people. And you expose yourself, your good and your bad, every day, right? At work, at school, when you take the train.
Right.
So the question is, how sociable are you
Mhm.
to find someone? And nothing against going on the app, but we live through drama every day. As a matter of fact, life is more about the bad than the good,
Mhm.
right? So we have to understand that finding a partner that knows how to resolve drama is more important than finding a partner that brings drama. And the reason being is because if that person knows how to resolve drama, when you're going through something very, I would say, life changing,
Mhm.
they will know how to navigate. How will you know how to fix life problems if you never had drama in your life? So
Right.
it's a illogical expectation, and I believe it's also unrealistic, and this is why a lot of people in apps, very little, there's a small little percent of people that marry, right?
Mhm.
From 100% could be 20,
Mhm.
right? That's a very low margin.
Mhm.
But think about it. You're in a dating app that you see
Mate.
visually mates every day. You choose, right?
Mhm.
Because you want to choose. You
Mhm.
choose. And you go on dates and they don't work out. But you got to ask yourself, like, is it them? Is it me?
Mhm.
Right? And I think that's the issue. Like, how many times do we really look at ourselves? Be honest. Like, hey, maybe I need to change certain rules that are based on ego and not on competency. Right?
But that's being. I mean, I think self-evaluation is very difficult. I just believe that. I mean, that's what that book is about too. It's looking inward. I don't think a lot of people. I think people are very afraid to turn the mirror on themselves and look at their deficiencies or admit to them, if you will, right? Because they've presented this image or whatever that is for so long, and to be honest about what's not there, I think is difficult.
What do you think, Kevin?
I think it lays down into having an interdependent relationship with somebody where it's like you have to be independent, and independent is having that self-awareness, that self-critique, and having the ability just to stand, right, and having confidence, because once you're confident and independent, then you could then hop into the next stage, which is interdependence, which is now you're bringing two independent people together, um, and now they could depend on each other for things. And you can only get interdependent if the ego's out the way, right? Pride's out the way, all that stuff. Because if you and that comes from independence, because you build ego and pride on being independent and basically saying, yeah, I could do this on my own. I could do this in this way, and you also build confidence while independence. But you had to have that confidence, but take away the ego and pride from it to have a relationship that can be synergetic. Because there needs to be a little bit of tension in order for like a proper like synergetic relationship to go through. Because like
The yin and the yang.
yeah, right. It's the iron sharpens iron too. Yeah. It's the spark that comes through in the synergy. 100%. And that happens it's an interdependent relationship, which I think maybe a lot of men have a struggle becoming interdependent because of the ego and pride in the independence. Right, we all want to do things by ourselves. Right, we all want to do things like getting it into a huge way. But sometimes people don't know how to. Some men don't know how to bring in the team to get involved into it. Like some men don't have the leadership skills in order to have the interdependency with one person and then a whole group of people. And in a relationship, that's all that is. It's like it's interdependence, partnership. You have to.
I'm gonna want one thing. You know, one other thing that I guess this is a learned thing, and I've heard it so much, and I feel it must be true, is the fact that we as men want to fix things, and sometimes, you know, our
counterpart just wants you to listen. and sometimes I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to do. Even to this day, I'm still not sure which one. Am I supposed to listen? Am I supposed to fix this? I'm not sure.
You're always like asking the question during
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And so I still find that's the conundrum sometimes. In relationships, no matter how long you've been in the relationship, it's like, okay, which part am I? What part am I supposed to do with it? It's
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of
Uh-huh.
the imperfection of
Right,
relationship
right.
is the mystery of what to do, but also even if I wasn't listening and I thought it was about to that I had to fix something.
Mhm.
It's just that, that's what makes a relation also intriguing.
Right.
Because if you knew everything your partner did, where's the element of surprise?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, where's the element of my learning, my own,
Right.
or that person's growth?
Right.
If everything was scripted,
Right.
and everything was like, oh yeah, you have, I'm gonna listen, right? And yeah, you listen. It's like, would that person come to you if they don't have the challenge?
Right. Right.
And that's why it's so important, again, where I started out, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Because when we get together as men and you share with one another, and there's little simple thing. I always tell men, when you get ready to, and it's true, and to take a woman on, it's just not her. There's family dynamics. We all were taught things growing up that we bring into a relationship. Some good, some very bad. So let's take something very simple as we're all married. We get married, right? And so in the bathroom is a tube of toothpaste. Do you squeeze it from the bottom? Do you squeeze it from the middle? Do you squeeze it from the top? And believe it or not, people's relationships get affected by something that's simple, And so you're going back and forth. Your family taught you that it's best from the bottom. Hers taught us the middle, but her aunt is there now saying it's from the. And so you're having these conversations and ego automatically. And my thing, you can't resolve it. Just get another toothpaste.
Yeah.
But legit, yeah.
What's the solution?
Yeah,
I'm
but,
big on that.
you know,
What is
yeah.
the solution?
Yeah. And so something as simple again is wash soap, right? So you both use the same brand. Now, are you using dry skin? Are you using, the scent? All of those things. These are little simple things before money, before sex, and other things that come in destroying relationship, family dynamic. Now, you're in a relationship, you don't like the family, but you love the girl. But the family dynamic part of it is true because she's going to bring, without a doubt, some of those aspects from the relationship. And so, again, like you said, that it shouldn't be a script. Right. It should be a partnership. And as Rich said, yeah, we got challenges. And this is what doesn't happen. And we talked about this one. We don't sit down and come up. How do we solve this?
Right.
What is an amicable? And sometimes you just got to lay it down for it to work, to make it work. Because my thing is, if I really love a woman, look, baby, I'll do the bottle. I ain't gonna be arguing. I want you. The toothpaste, like we're gonna run up sometime. My breath ain't gonna be smelling too good, and I'm gonna want you to still be with me. So that toothpaste doesn't matter to me, and that's why we make so minor things major in terms of men, like Richard said, and it puts stress on us. It puts pressure on us. And our partner, we're self-inducing it because our ego and pride, our partner not even thinking about the stress and stuff that we're putting on. And so what I want to ask you, because Richard talked about, I've been married a very long time. I told you I got three, sons your age. I got grandkids. One of my grandchildren are older than you. So in terms of what is your most difficult in terms of being a young man and trying to form a relationship as a man with not only other men but women as well. What is the biggest challenge that you face out there?
Ooh, for me, sometimes it's communication. I'm still working on my communication. For my girl, it's been with Autumn. You met Autumn, yeah. So with Autumn, I work on my letting things out, like not just holding on to things, like just letting things out, like expressing them. Sometimes I'm also learning not everything it needs to be let out. Yeah.
You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, right. Literally.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that one.
Yeah.
Inside voice.
Literally.
That is hilarious.
Or he's doing something as well. I'm like, oh, I just gotta get this done, and I don't mean to neglect, but it's just because I'm trying to set up something for our end in mind, right? For our end in mind, for our goal that's there, right? And I'm focused on that. And I'm just sometimes I forget about the present when I think about the end in mind.
I think also like you don't have. It's okay to not agree on your disagreement. Like, what do I mean? I'll give you an example to that. You know, long time ago, I was dating someone that was very open with their finances, right? They played out, here's my bank account, you can see everything. And I respected that, right? But I'm more of a private person, right? So I'm not going to share that information, you know? So, you know, obviously the criteria, there are two different criterias, right? That in a relation, you should open up all your finances. Mine was like, I'm just a private type of person. There's not, none of them were right or wrong. But how do you come to an agreement when there's a disagreement? Is accept the fact that that person is just like that, and the other person accept the fact that, you know, I have a different conviction. And I think that when we try to convince the other person that your mechanisms or your methods are better, when they're actually just because they're different, you have to check yourself. It's like, well, if they don't show me the finance or they do, how's that really going to make the relation better or worse? Right?
Yeah, 100%. It goes down to that becomes like a paradigm, right? It's not really a principle. It's something that's just saying like it's a perspective of something, but that doesn't affect the core of the relationship. Not showing the finances, because the way that you treat her is the way you're gonna treat her, and the way she treats you is the way she's gonna treat you.
Well,
You
like,
know?
and like, for example, I remember like building her portfolio. It's like, hey, invest, build, you know, helping build that portfolio. You know, yes, I can share that knowledge, but it's just a choice. Like we all have different choices that we want to, you know, abide by. But that doesn't make that my conviction is better than yours. And I think we have to identify that if we build a relationship.
I think that finance is real important. We talk about
Yes.
50% of relationships are solved of what we call it finance. So I think finance is an important component. Not necessarily lay out everything that you have, but if you know this person budgeting, compulsive buying, like we're trying to, if you're becoming a partner, your partner doesn't know how to save a nickel, you know, and all they had was a penny to begin with, not a good, you know, because it doesn't change. Those habits typically don't change unless people want to change habit, right? And then that can become contentious down the line if that person's not intentional about, you know, where they are. If you are a safe or a wealth builder, so forth, and this person is a spender, uh, you know, long term, that might not be a good place unless they start to see the benefit of adopting something that's potentially beneficial for them too.
Yeah.
So I would say that. That's what I think. I don't know how much longer we go.
No, we're gonna wrap up.
Okay.
And so, like, where they can find men make a difference? Where are you guys located? How can they reach out to you?
We're located in West Orange. Our physical address is P.O. Box 331, West Orange. Our site is MD dot J as in John, G as in George, B as in Bruce. The word ventures, like you're going on a venture, but it's plural .net. MMD dot JGBventures .net. And you'll be able to go in and see all the different programs and community functions and things of that nature that we're involved in. And in closing, one of the things that we're going to get back to doing that COVID affected was men don't get, again, the recognition that they do for all the wonderful things for the most point. And so we were recognizing men throughout the state of New Jersey. You had to live in New Jersey to be recognized. And we decided that we weren't going to recognize like celebrities and big time people that people always recognize, and that we were going to find men that were doing great things. And we had 3 levels. It was the man of the year, and that was one man who would exemplify the high ideals of men make a difference, which is simple, challenging and empowering men to be the priest, providers, and protectors of their family, community, and personal development. The other was men of distinction, usually younger men who just started working and were doing wonderful things in the community, exemplifying our ideals. And then the other was unsung patriots, usually seasoned men of the community, most of them that had retired but continue to be involved and serve as mentors and surrogate fathers, uncles, so forth. And we will honor them each year at our community service award each year. And we're going to get back into doing that, as well as some other things in this challenging community. Rich and I are talking about people with doing partnerships with others now, because as we go into this economic crisis that we're going to face, partnerships is going to mean a lot, especially for underserved and men who can't get the services that our organization provides. That's it in a nutshell.
Where can they find Kendall Financial Group?
You can go online. It's the Kendall, KENDELL, financialgroup.com. And on there, it goes over explanation of different solutions that may be available. You can schedule an appointment to meet. But again, it's really information and educational. And then fundamentally, when you meet with me, my goal is to be specific about who you are and what your lifestyle represents. Again, the emphasis is lifestyle financial planning. And so the goal is to make sure you maintain your lifestyle throughout your lifetime.
Where can they buy your book?
The book is available on lulu.com. You can just pull it up. Oh God, I Need a Job. It's self-published. And like I said, it's kind of the foundation of even where I am now, knowing thyself. It's really what the fundamental aspect of the book is.
So we finish normally, we give a little, Kevin, what did you learn from this episode?
Yeah, I learned that men are doing incredible things, and we are stronger at learning even more about ourselves and the community and how we are evolving throughout. Basically, we're evolving in great places, and we're doing amazing things.
That's cool.
What did I learn? I think the importance of financial education and serving those underprivileged, definitely being more community oriented, like what you guys are doing is a great service to not only the community but to the country. And my major takeaway was the rule you created to make a young man grow richer.
Mm.
I believe it's what men are supposed to do to other men, especially younger men or kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because without mentorship and guidance, we can see the difference, right? We can see somebody mentored by somebody that had a good heart, but also had a good mentality and mindset, and how this young man projected himself for his own life. He made the decision at the end of the day to follow your mentorship. And the program you guys both work on, Make a Difference, is about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is about changing men's life, changing children's life at any age, But then, even if you're a man, it's never too late to get that mentor to project yourself even further. So that concludes the Ethics Skill podcast. We hope you like it. We hope that you leave a comment. If you have any questions, obviously we will answer. All the information about Men Make a Difference will be on our description. So will be Kendall Financial Group. So if you guys want to reach out to these two amazing men, Richard and John, that information will be below. And don't forget, hit that comment, subscribe, like, but more importantly, let's keep exploring human experiences. We'll see you next time.
help us continue to embrace these human experiences and explore more about ourselves and others by just subscribing. You know, if you like our content, definitely like, comment, share it. But also, if you want to be part of our podcast, all you have to do is leave a comment and tell us what you want to talk about. Remember, this is the platform for the people, and we're here to explore those life experiences that are very unique to you and to everyone else. Don't forget, subscribe.